We're taught that Christopher Columbus was the first outsider to reach America. But what if history got it wrong? A newly uncovered 5,000-year-old map found in Egypt challenges everything we know.
These maps were largely based on much older source maps.
Based on even older sources, this map holds startlingly accurate details about America.
Actually, only a corner of his map has survived. It was originally a world map. We now just have a bit that shows the east coast of South America and North America and the west coast of Africa.
Long before Columbus set sail. How did ancient civilizations possess such knowledge? What secrets does this discovery reveal? Join us as we unravel the mystery behind this ancient map and its shocking implications for history as we know it. Nubia and its egg. Nubia, an ancient civilization with a rich and distinct culture, played a significant role in shaping the history of northeastern Africa. Situated along the Nile River in what is now southern Egypt and northern Sudan, Nubia was a thriving center of trade, craftsmanship, and military strength for thousands of years. Although it often existed alongside the more well-known Egyptian civilization, Nubia had its own unique identity, language, and artistic traditions, which set it apart as a powerful force in the ancient world. And an amazing discovery was made in Nubia that made everyone question historical timelines. Archaeologists have been uncovering relics in Egypt that offer glimpses into Nubia's past, and one of the most puzzling discoveries is an artifact known as the Nubian egg. Unearthed in 1907 by British archaeologist Cecil Mallaby Firth, the Nubian egg has remained an object of intrigue for more than a century. It is believed to be around 7,000 years old.
So the egg could be older than that, but minimum this thing is 7,000 years old.
Making it significantly older than many of Egypt's most famous monuments. The egg, crafted from an ostrich shell, is covered in intricate designs that have sparked debate among researchers. It is now housed in the Nubia Museum in southern Egypt, where scholars and visitors alike continue to wonder about its meaning. The surface of the egg is decorated with a set of symbols, the most striking of which are three triangular shapes, positioned alongside horizontal lines. A winding serpent coils around the egg, and a small, mysterious globule appears on its surface. The purpose of these symbols remains unknown, but their precise geometric arrangement suggests that they were not merely decorative. Some researchers believe that the triangles might represent the famous pyramids of Egypt, specifically the three largest pyramids on the Giza Plateau, including the Great Pyramid of Khufu. If this interpretation is correct, it raises a fascinating question. How could an artifact that predates the pyramids by over 2,000 years depict them so accurately? An alternative explanation is that the triangular shapes symbolize mountains rather than man-made structures. However, a closer look at the carvings reveals a level of symmetry and precision that does not align with natural rock formations. This has led some scholars to question the conventional dating of the pyramids themselves. The commonly accepted timeline, which places their construction around 2500 BC, is largely based on evidence such as inscriptions found inside the Great Pyramid. However, some researchers argue that these inscriptions may not be authentic. In the 19th century, British explorer Colonel Howard Vyse claimed to have discovered markings inside the pyramid that bore the name of Pharaoh Khufu. These markings were used to link the pyramid to Khufu's reign, but doubts about their authenticity persist. Some believe that Vyse may have forged the inscriptions in an attempt to solidify his place in history. The question of the pyramid's true age extends beyond inscriptions. Some scholars argue that the pyramids could be much older than commonly believed. One of the leading voices in this debate is Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University. Schoch's research on the Sphinx suggests that its erosion patterns are not consistent with wind and sand damage, but rather with prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall. This finding challenges traditional timelines because Egypt has not experienced such heavy rainfall for thousands of years. Based on geological evidence, Schock and others propose that the Sphinx, and possibly the pyramids, could date back to a much earlier period, possibly between 5,000 and 10,000 BC, when the Sahara was wetter and supported rivers and vegetation. The possibility that the Nubian egg contains depictions of structures that predate recorded history adds another layer of mystery. Some researchers have even linked the egg's symbols to ancient myths about lost civilizations. The concentric circles etched into its surface bear a resemblance to Plato's description of Atlantis, a legendary island civilization that he wrote about in 300 BC. According to Plato, Atlantis was made up of circular rings of land and water, resembling layers of a cake. If the egg does depict Atlantis, it could suggest that the lost city was much closer to Egypt than previously believed, or that its memory was preserved in the oral traditions of ancient civilizations long before Plato's time. Another interpretation is that the egg's markings reflect the seasonal changes of the Nile River. The width of the river fluctuates throughout the year, and its annual flooding was essential for agriculture in ancient Egypt and Nubia. The egg's depiction of triangles and horizontal lines could symbolize the connection between the river, the pyramids, and the natural cycles that shaped life in the region. But how is Nubia so connected to Egypt? We can only find out by exploring the history of the civilization. The history of Nubia dates back to at least 2500 BC, when it was known as the Kingdom of Kush. This civilization was a dominant power south of Egypt, extending deep into present-day Sudan. The Egyptians referred to Nubia as Taseti, meaning land of the bow, a reference to the region's highly skilled archers. Nubian warriors were renowned for their expertise in archery, and Egyptian armies often recruited them as mercenaries. Beyond their military prowess, the Nubians were key trading partners of Egypt, supplying valuable resources such as gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animal skins. The two civilizations maintained close ties for centuries, exchanging goods, cultural influences, and even rulers. Egyptian pharaohs often formed alliances with Nubian leaders, cementing their relationship through diplomatic marriages and the exchange of gifts. But things weren't always this rosy between the two. Much of what we know about ancient Nubia and its most powerful kingdom, Kush, comes from Egyptian sources. However, these accounts are often biased, as Egypt and Nubia were frequently in conflict. Egyptian rulers saw Nubia both as a valuable trading partner and a military threat, which influenced the way they recorded events. Evidence suggests that even around 13,000 BC, Nubia was home to advanced societies using complex tools, crafting arrowheads, and burying their dead in organized cemeteries. By 5000 BC, Nubian communities had transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle to settled farming and animal husbandry. Mud brick and stone structures replaced temporary shelters, and people began using copper and gold to create tools and jewelry. Nubia's rich gold deposits attracted the attention of Egypt, which sought to control the land and its resources. The first recorded Egyptian military campaign into Nubia dates back to around 3000 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Jer. An inscription from Egypt's first dynasty describes a battle in which Egyptian forces clashed with Nubian warriors. Another record, the Palermo Stone, which documents the deeds of Egypt's Old Kingdom rulers, recounts how Pharaoh Sneferu, around 2500 BC, captured 7,000 Nubians and seized 200,000 cattle and sheep. By this time, Egypt had established colonies in Nubia, primarily for mining and smelting gold and copper. For a long time, Egyptian rulers avoided direct confrontation with Nubian groups, preferring instead to maintain trade relations. The people of Nubia were known for their fierce independence, and controlling them would not be easy. Moreover, a stable and prosperous Nubia was beneficial for both sides. As long as trade flowed smoothly, Egypt had little incentive to invade or annex the region beyond the Second Cataract. However, by around 2100 BC, relations had deteriorated. The exact reasons are unclear, but armed conflicts between Egyptian and Nubian forces became more frequent. In response, Egyptian rulers built a series of fortresses between the Second and Third Cataracts, hoping to protect their interests. One possible cause of this change was the rise of a powerful Nubian city-state, Kerma. Established around 2400 BC, Kerma was located just south of the Third Cataract, a strategic position that gave it control over trade routes. Any Egyptian merchants or armies traveling south had to disembark before reaching Kerma, as the Nile River's rapids made it impossible to continue by boat. Kerma's location made it a key hub for trade between Egypt and regions farther south in Africa. It was not only a place for merchants to rest and resupply, but also a thriving commercial center in its own right. By around 1850 BC, Kerma had grown strong enough to challenge Egypt. An inscription from El Kab, an ancient Egyptian site, describes how Nubians raided Egyptian cities, looting treasures such as alabaster vases, copper daggers, and statues. In retaliation, Egypt launched military expeditions into Nubia, but the very fact that Nubians could strike deep into Egyptian territory was a cause for concern. However, Egypt was also dealing with another major threat, the Hyksos, a foreign power from Western Asia that had taken control of northern Egypt. The Hyksos even tried to form an alliance with Kerma, recognizing it as a potential partner against the native Egyptian rulers. During this time, Egypt was divided. The Hyksos controlled Lower Egypt, while a local Egyptian dynasty ruled from Thebes in Upper Egypt. A Theban prince, Kamosi, discovered evidence of communication between Kerma and the Hyksos, which led him to launch an attack on both enemies. His campaign weakened the Nubians, and his successor, Ahmose I, eventually expelled the Hyksos and reunited Egypt. Now free from external threats, Ahmose turned his attention south. Unlike earlier Egyptian rulers who had preferred trade over conquest, Ahmose and his successors saw military occupation as the best way to secure their southern border. For the next 90 years, Egypt fought a series of wars against Nubia. By 1460 BC, Egyptian forces had conquered the entire region, including Kerma. Although the city remained prosperous under Egyptian rule, its independence was lost. Nubia was now firmly under Egyptian control, marking the beginning of a long period of cultural exchange and assimilation. For nearly 600 years, Nubia remained under Egyptian rule, its culture heavily influenced by its northern neighbor. Egyptian temples, religious practices, and art styles became more prominent in Nubian society. Despite this, the Nubians retained aspects of their distinct identity, adapting Egyptian influences while maintaining their own traditions. The balance of power shifted again in the 4th century BC with the arrival of Alexander the Great. His conquests reshaped the political landscape of Egypt and, by extension, Nubia. As Egypt came under Greek rule, Nubia gradually regained some independence. During this period, the kingdom of Kush flourished, developing its own writing system known as Meroitic script, which remains only partially deciphered to this day. The Kushites also built remarkable architectural structures, including pyramids that, while smaller in scale than those of Egypt, were constructed in far greater numbers. Sudan today is home to more pyramids than Egypt, a testament to Nubia's architectural achievements. By 350 AD, the kingdom of Kush faced new challenges. The Aksumite Empire, based in what is now Ethiopia, expanded its influence into Nubia, introducing Christianity to the region. This marked a turning point in Nubia's history, as the traditional Kushite religious practices began to decline. Over time, Christianity became the dominant faith, replacing earlier beliefs and reshaping the cultural identity of Nubia. The spread of Ethiopian Christianity played a significant role in Nubia's transformation, and the once powerful kingdom gradually faded into the background of history. Even though much has changed over time, traces of Nubian culture remain visible in Egypt today. From music and clothing to architecture, language, and religious traditions, the influence of this ancient civilization still lingers. As for the Nubian egg, whether it's a record of ancient knowledge, an artistic representation of the pyramids, or something else entirely, it remains an enigma. For now, the meaning of the egg's symbols remains unresolved, and its existence challenges us to reconsider the depths of Nubian and Egyptian history. Thinis's map of the world. Thinis was a mysterious, thriving city. It is believed to have been the political and cultural center of Egypt during the early dynastic period, around 3100 to 2686 before Christ. It was the capital of the first pharaohs, including Narmer, who is often identified with Menes, the legendary king credited with uniting Upper and Lower Egypt. This unification was a defining moment in ancient Egyptian history, marking the beginning of the first dynasty and laying the foundation for a centralized administration that would govern Egypt for millennia. The rulers of Thinis played a crucial role in consolidating power, fostering a sense of shared identity among the Egyptian people, and establishing institutions that would shape the nation's future. Writing, religious practices, and economic policies took root during this time, ensuring effective governance and communication across the newly unified land. Thinis was more than just a political capital, it was also a religious and economic hub. The city hosted early temples dedicated to deities such as Horus, the falcon-headed god associated with kingship. These temples reinforced the divine authority of the pharaohs, legitimizing their rule through religious symbolism. In addition to its spiritual significance, Thinis was strategically located near important trade routes, facilitating economic exchanges with neighboring regions such as Nubia and the Levant. This advantageous position allowed it to become a thriving center for trade, dealing in gold, ivory, and exotic materials essential to Egypt's growing economy. The wealth accumulated through these activities supported monumental building projects and artistic endeavors, demonstrating the power and sophistication of Thinite rulers. Despite its significance, the exact location of Thinis remains a mystery. Most of what is known about the city comes from ancient texts, including the Palermo stone, the pyramid texts, and the writings of Manetho, a 3rd century BC Egyptian historian. The pyramid texts, some of the oldest religious writings in the world, reference Thinis in a spiritual and mythological context, linking it to the journey of the deceased pharaoh into the afterlife. This connection underscores the city's dual political and religious significance in early Egyptian thought. Thinis played a pivotal role in shaping the concept of Egyptian kingship. The rulers of this city, often depicted as divine intermediaries, established traditions that would persist throughout Egypt's long history. The unification of Egypt under the Thinite kings set a precedent for centralized rule, influencing subsequent dynasties. The symbolism of kingship, including the double crown and the use of royal titulary, can be traced back to this period. The ideology of divine kingship, where the pharaoh was considered the earthly embodiment of Horus and later associated with Osiris in death, was solidified during this time, providing a theological basis for the authority of future rulers. Now, over the years, archaeologists have uncovered numerous artifacts at Abydos and Saqqara that reflect artistic traditions that originated in or were influenced by Thinis, each offering a glimpse into the lives of the people who once lived there. However, among these discoveries, none have sparked as much curiosity as the painted maps found on the walls of Thinis. These paintings were initially thought to be decorative, much like other ancient Egyptian artwork. But upon closer inspection, experts realized they were something far more remarkable. The paintings featured intricate outlines of continents, drawn with an astonishing level of detail. What stood out the most was the unmistakable presence of the American continent. This raised an intriguing question. How could the artists of ancient Thinis have known about a landmass that, according to conventional history, was unknown to the rest of the world until the voyages of Christopher Columbus in the 15th century? One possibility is that these maps were created by a civilization with knowledge of distant lands, potentially acquired through early exploration or trade networks that extended beyond Africa, Europe, and Asia. If ancient Egyptians had some awareness of the Americas, this would challenge the widely accepted timeline of transoceanic contact. Could it be that Egyptian explorers, or perhaps even earlier civilizations, crossed the Atlantic thousands of years before European navigators? While there is no direct evidence of Egyptian presence in the Americas, the idea is not entirely far-fetched. Ancient civilizations, including the Egyptians, were skilled sailors who traveled long distances along trade routes that connected Africa to the Middle East, the Mediterranean, and beyond. Some researchers have even speculated that Egyptian knowledge of seafaring could have extended further than we currently assume. Beyond the depiction of the Americas, the maps also featured highly accurate representations of other regions, including Europe, Asia, and Africa. The Nile River, the Mediterranean Sea, and major mountain ranges were clearly outlined, suggesting that the artists had either first-hand knowledge from extensive travel or access to information gathered from other cultures over time. The level of accuracy in these maps suggests a sophisticated understanding of geography that goes beyond what was previously thought possible for that era. The paintings also reveal the remarkable artistic abilities of the people of Thinis. The use of natural pigments, combined with the precision of their line work, demonstrates a mastery of technique that would have required both skill and knowledge. Their ability to depict geographic features with such accuracy raises questions about the sources of their information. Did they rely on oral histories, written records, or observations passed down through generations? The discovery of these paintings adds another layer of mystery to our understanding of ancient civilizations. It forces us to reconsider what early cultures may have known about the world and how they interacted with one another. Could there be more evidence hidden beneath the sands of Egypt or in other ancient sites around the world that could change our understanding of history? As archaeologists continue to uncover new findings, the story of Thinis remains an important reminder that history is far from complete. The past still holds secrets waiting to be revealed. Nagaland. Nagaland is a land of vibrant traditions, rich history, and remarkable diversity. Tucked away in the northeastern part of India, this region has a cultural legacy that stretches back centuries. The Naga civilization flourished long before the rise of Egypt's pharaohs, with records suggesting its existence as early as 300 to 400 BC. Today, Nagaland remains a place where history and modernity blend seamlessly, creating a unique identity that is reflected in its languages, festivals, and way of life. But it wasn't always like this. While the roots of Naga resistance trace as far back as the 13th century, modern resistance began in the 20th century. After the First Anglo-Burmese War in 1824, the British took control of large parts of northeast India, including the Naga Hills. Until then, the Naga tribes lived independently, with little external interference. Then came World War I, which unexpectedly brought the Naga tribes into contact with the world beyond their hills. Around 2,000 Nagas were recruited to fight alongside the British in France. When they returned home, these war veterans had a new perspective. They realized that their struggle had little to do with India's own independence movement, and their aspirations were separate from those of mainland India. This sense of distinct identity led to the formation of the Naga Club in 1918, bringing together members of different tribes. Another unifying force was Christianity, which had been introduced to the region in the 1840s by American Baptist missionaries. When the Simon Commission arrived in India in 1929 to discuss constitutional reforms, the Naga Club submitted a memorandum making their stance clear. They did not want to be part of the Indian Union. They claim that their language is quite different from those of the plains or mainland India, and they have no social affinities with Hindus or Muslims because they are looked down upon by one for their beef and the other for their pork. In response, the British designated the Naga Hills as excluded areas under the Government of India Act of 1935, keeping them separate from direct Indian administration. But as India's independence movement gained strength, the Naga Club evolved into a formal political body, the Naga National Council, NNC. The NNC's goal was clear: complete independence for the Naga people. However, like many political movements, it was divided. Some leaders were willing to negotiate with India, while others were determined to resist at all costs. In June 1947, the Indian government reached an agreement with the moderates, and Nagaland became part of India on paper. But in reality, the situation was far from settled. One of the most radical voices in the movement, Angami Zapu Fizo, rejected the agreement outright. Fizo was uncompromising in his belief that Nagaland should never be part of India. He even claimed that Mahatma Gandhi had once told him, "If the Nagas do not wish to join the Union of India, nobody will force them to do so." However, Jawaharlal Nehru and the Indian leadership did not share this view. Nehru believed that an independent Nagaland would not survive between the pressures of India and China. But Fizo was not swayed. On August 14, 1947, one day before India's independence, he unilaterally declared Nagaland's independence. The next day, as the rest of India celebrated, the Nagas boycotted the festivities. Then, in 1952, two major events escalated tensions. First, the NNC conducted a plebiscite in which it claimed 19.9% of Nagas had voted for independence. Second, the Nagas completely boycotted India's first general elections. The situation reached a boiling point in 1953 when Nehru visited Nagaland along with Burma's prime minister. The Nagas greeted him with hostility, some booed, while others simply turned their backs and walked away in protest. This open defiance led to the deployment of Indian troops, triggering violent clashes and brutal deaths. These events deepened the divide between the NNC's moderate and extremist factions. The rift became deadly in 1915-6 when moderate leader T. Sakri was assassinated by Fizo's hardliners. That same year, Fizo escaped to London via East Pakistan, but not before forming the federal government of Nagaland and assembling an underground army. As violence escalated, the Indian government responded with the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, AFSPA, in 1958, granting sweeping powers to security forces in the region. The conflict turned even bloodier, with estimates suggesting that over 1,400 Nagas lost their lives between 1956 and 1958. Faced with mounting violence, some Naga leaders sought a peaceful resolution. In 1959, representatives from various tribes came together to form the Naga People's Convention, NPC. Unlike the NNC, which sought full independence, the NPC worked with the Indian government to create a separate state within India. This effort bore fruit in 1963, when Nagaland was officially recognized as the 16th state of India. As already mentioned, Nagaland is made up of several different tribes. Therefore, one of the most striking features of the land is its linguistic diversity. Each of its many tribes has its own language, and even within a single tribe, dialects can vary significantly from one village to another. For example, the Angami people, one of the major Naga tribes, speak dialects that become more distinct the farther apart their villages are. This diversity presents challenges in communication, both between tribes and even among people of the same ethnic group. To bridge this gap, English has been adopted as the official language, while Nagamese, a Creole language influenced by Assamese, serves as a common tongue for everyday interactions. All of this history was discovered through books, archaeological sites, and oral traditions. But what about Nagaland's culture? Festivals are at the heart of Naga culture, playing a crucial role in the social and spiritual lives of the people. These celebrations are deeply tied to the agricultural cycle, which remains the backbone of Nagaland's economy. More than 85% of the population depends on farming, and villages, whether perched on hills or nestled in lush valleys, are built around this way of life. Each festival is an opportunity to offer gratitude to nature and seek blessings for a good harvest. Participation is not just encouraged, but often considered a communal duty, strengthening the bonds between individuals, families, and the land they cultivate. Nagaland is also known for its remarkable craftsmanship. Women, in particular, are skilled artisans, producing intricate jewelry, woven textiles, and wooden carvings that reflect the artistic heritage of the region. Music and dance are equally important, with each tribe having its own distinct performance traditions. Tribal dances, often performed during festivals, captivate audiences with their energy and symbolism, telling stories of bravery, love, and the connection between humans and nature. Despite its deep-rooted traditional beliefs, Nagaland has also embraced a new religious influence over time. Christianity, which arrived in the region in the 19th century, is now the dominant faith, with over 75% of the population identifying as Baptist, earning Nagaland the title of the most Baptist state in the world. Other religions, such as Catholicism, Hinduism, and Islam, also have a presence. However, even with this shift, many ancient customs and spiritual practices persist. During festivals, village shamans conduct rituals and offer prayers to a supreme being, known by different names in various Naga dialects, asking for protection and prosperity. These ceremonies often take place before planting or as crops near maturity, ensuring that traditional beliefs remain intertwined with daily life. Marriage customs in Nagaland also vary from tribe to tribe, with some groups following unusual practices. In certain communities, for instance, a fowl's behavior is observed to determine whether a couple's union will be prosperous. The people of Nagaland are known for their warm hospitality, and visitors are often welcomed with enthusiasm. While the region has a history of warrior traditions, including the once-feared practice of headhunting, such customs are now part of folklore rather than daily life. Instead of engaging in these past warrior practices, the Naga people now honor their ancestors through storytelling, traditional attire, and cultural celebrations that highlight their lineage and social rank. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.